welcome to the Mindchimp Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the Mindchimp Podcast. How are we doing?
Good.
Oh, we're both being polite and waiting for the other person to speak to.
I actually wasn't sure if it was for us or for the audience. Sorry. I've never done this before.
Oh, good grief. I'm good, Danny.
This is good to know. So I guess let me for the guys who are listening, you'll probably know these familiar voices. They have probably the best L&D podcast, I think. The GoodPractice guys. And so you've got Ross. Say hi, Ross.
Hi, Ross.
And Owen. Say hi, Owen.
I don't know if I can. Hello.
Awesome.
Hello.
So guys, I've never really done a podcast. Well, I've done a podcast with groups, but not from kind of two people who are from the same business. So my goal today is mainly to just play you off on each other as much as I can. So usually when I open up this show and I ask my guests to kind of summarize who they are with a log line or, a statement. So Ross, let's go with you first. How would you summarize you?
I found this incredibly difficult trying to do this in advance. So I come from a writing background. I went to uni to do creative writing, and then
Is this a log line, or is it? Are you explaining the log line before you introduce it? The tension is unbearable.
Yeah. Wait. So, what's your objection? That I've gone into my life story?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that was it.
Yeah. Danny said, "What's your log line?" And I'm pretty sure that he said that it was supposed to be something that should pop and tells the audience something about you or your life.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So I'm an awkward nerd who has fallen into a profession full of awkward nerds and become quite comfortable there.
Okay, I like that. I think it's always good when somebody can call themselves a nerd. It's a good place to be in life. How about you, Owen? What's yours?
The same.
So mine is. What, were you providing one for me, Ross? I really die. The one I've come up with for myself is a guy in love with good ideas.
Okay, I like that. So we'll come back to these shortly, I'm sure. But I guess I tend to ask my guests kind of to pick 6 numbers, but because there's 2 of you, so we'll do it 3 each. There's my maths at its highest. Ross, what I need you to do for me, please, if you can pick 3 numbers from 1 to 100.
21, 73, and 36.
And Owen, go for it. 3 more.
161, 83.
And 83. Awesome. We shall come back to them later on down the line. Number 1 is one of my favourite numbers, just to give you an heads up there, Owen. For this question later on. But I guess, so, I've made a big sweeping statement there that everybody knows who you are. So maybe you guys can kind of, usually I say kind of tell me your story about your past and stuff. But actually what I want to know is
you want the story,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. But I guess it's like, tell me the story of how GoodPractice kind of came together.
I think that's one for Owen.
Yeah. So we both work at GoodPractice, but we weren't there from the start, although I have been there for a long time now. So, I mean, GoodPractice started about 16 or 17 years ago. And it was started by a woman who ran a training company. And she was getting fed up of constantly recreating trainer notes for stuff. And so she decided that it would be a really good idea if they created a library of this stuff. And then once they had a library of it, which is all kind of stored in Word files and, in files on Microsoft Windows, she decided it would be really interesting to see if she could use this newfangled thing, the internet, to make it available to people and turn that into a business model. And so that was literally what the initial business. That's how the initial business started. Was like giving trainers access to a bunch of training material stuff online, and it was all in the form of Word documents. And so, they sold a bunch of them, and a couple of their clients said, "This stuff's really useful. Could we make it available to our managers because they sometimes do training?" And the people working in the business thought about it and thought, "That's this stuff isn't really suitable for that kind of audience. But what if we could make stuff that was suitable for that audience?" And so they kind of pivoted, or they added on an additional product. Was kind of like the first additional product that GoodPractice did, was making a product that had useful stuff for managers. But again, at this point, early days of the internet, or widespread adoption of the internet, all Word documents. And then the company kind of has evolved from going from a company that has kind of got two things at its heart. One part being the creation of useful content for different kinds of audiences, and the second part being a company that uses technology to help people.
Okay. So kind of, I guess one of the questions what jumps out to mind for me is kind of, at what point did the podcast become an idea and kind of be the ultimate beast what it is now, reference to a 90s game?
Yeah. At what point did the podcast become better known than the company?
But that's a great thing, right? Your podcast is kind of, your podcast is your channel. I found you via podcast, and then obviously Owen, we then meet up when we can. Ross, I don't think we've actually met in real life, but we need to make that happen. But it's how I found you is via the podcast. So I kind of, where, for me, you guys were kind of ahead of the podcasts, and every man and his dog has got an L&D podcast now.
Yeah.
But
a new one every week.
Yeah, but this is the thing, like, for me, yours is kind of well ahead of that. But where did this idea come from, and why, and whose idea was it, I guess?
Oh, Ross, you've gone silent.
Oh, technical difficulties.
It's the podcasting pro.
You don't get this on the Good Practice, do you?
No, we do. Well, no, we edit this out.
Oh, I feel like he's having a bit of a mare.
I can. What would you? Oh, here we go.
Oh, we're on.
Hello.
How's that?
I'm back.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking, Owen's not shutting up. I keep trying to cut in, and he's like, he won't stop talking. I understand why now.
So Ross, how much did you hear of that? Did you hear any of it?
I heard all of it.
Okay, perfect.
And had lots of interesting additional material to say, but I missed my chance.
So,
so I heard the question. So the podcast.
Yeah.
So I had been working at GoodPractice for about 3 years, I think. And I was very into podcasts. I was one of these people who was like, we listen to 10 hours of podcasts a week, which sounds insane. But I think once you stop listening to music, basically, whenever I was out walking or on the bus or wherever it was, I listened to podcasts. And I heard, and I was trying to think today, I think it was Adam Buxton interviewing Scroobius Pip. And Buxton asked Pip why he started a podcast. And he said, because it sounded easy. You just record it and then you put it on iTunes. And I was like, oh, that does sound easy. And I'd come from a journalism background as my undergrad, and then I did a bit of work as a journalist as well. And I'd kind of missed that interviewing, getting to know people, having an opportunity to ask invasive personal questions like you're doing now, but with some sort of reason behind it. And so I thought, well, I'll start a podcast. That'll be good. It was called Bottle of Red, and the concept was I bring a bottle of red wine and then split it with the guest, and we'd find out a bit more about what they were doing. And I think maybe one episode was out, or two, or maybe I hadn't released one yet. But speaking about it in the office, and Owen said, "What about an L&D podcast?" And I was like, "No, that's crazy. I don't know what I'm doing at all. We definitely should not do that." But my confidence grew doing those. The season 1 of Bottle of Red was 10 episodes, and then season 2, I think, did 7 episodes, and then kind of experimented with the format and lost interest. But then we thought we'd do a good practice one. So kind of learned how to do it at home personally, brought it into work, made a bit of a hash of it, I would say. But round about episode 20, I think we kind of worked out what we were doing with the good practice one. I don't really recommend going further back than that.
Okay. So,
Owen, does that match your recollection of how this went?
No. No. So
in his mind, it was his idea.
No. It wasn't. It wasn't that. So the bits that so you had started a podcast, Bottle of Red.
Yes.
Similar to Ross, I am also I'm a podcast fiend. I love podcasts, and so I can't remember how many I subscribe to at the moment, but 40 or something like that. I mean, I don't listen to every episode of every one, but I listen to most episodes of most of them. And so Ross has started this podcast, and people internally have said, maybe Good Practice should do a podcast. And I think initially the thoughts were it was going to be like talking about good practice stuff. And I had thought, I don't think that will work. And I also had some views on what you needed to do to have a podcast that worked. And so some of that was, look, it needs to be something that you can commit to doing in the long term, because they're very rarely are they sort of like successful right from the get-go. And I kind of felt it needed to be a conversation. And so I think kind of what I had said, we had conversations about it as well. Because you said, some people are saying we should do a good practice podcast. And I was like,
not how I remember it at all.
No?
No, I remember the very moment when you said, what about an L&D podcast? And I had a proper panic attack. I was like, this sounds awfully formal. No, I'm not sticking my reputation on this. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe it percolated. Maybe this is,
I think it had percolated.
Of the idea, and then maybe because we revisited it. Because I kind of shut it down at first.
Oh, yeah.
A few months passed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and I think other people started to get a similar inclination, but it being kind of about good practice or about the content that we produce, etc. And I just didn't feel that we could do something like that. I thought an L&D podcast would be a better focus for us, because we like talking about L&D because we're both nerds.
Yeah, there was a gap as well. I think we were struggling to find good L&D podcasts, and certainly for the first few months, struggling to make one.
So how many episodes are you in now on your podcast?
We are about to celebrate our 3rd anniversary / 150th episode.
Wow. Okay. This is amazing, right? So your most recent one, the one which I listened to last week, I think it was Women in Learning with Babs Thompson and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which I thought was quite a unique podcast, and a unique episode, definitely. But I thought it was a good one. It was definitely a good one.
Thank you. But I think that was one that I went into quite nervous about. I was very concerned about the optics of it being hosted by a man. But it's myself and Ross Dickey who take turns hosting, and Owen tends to be the most frequent contributor. And then we have a third person who's always an external guest. And it felt disingenuous to sub out the regular people and bring in a female host just because of the topic. And we didn't want to suggest that men shouldn't be involved in the Women in Learning chat either.
Yeah.
So I was slightly uncomfortable about a man leading a panel of women talking about women in learning, but that was why we made that decision.
I think it works really well, actually. I think there'll be, I say the biggest uproar. There probably wouldn't have been any uproar, but if you did decide to kind of all of a sudden change what your podcast is about and who the guests are, that would be more odd than anything. So yeah, kudos. So usually I tend to I ask my guests what it is they want to be when they grow older. So when you was in school and the teacher would ask you, and maybe Owen would go to you first, what is it you want to be when you grow older, Owen? What was it you would say to the teacher?
So the first one, I'm not sure if I would mention this to the teacher. The first thing I can remember specifically was I wanted to be Harry Seldon. So, and everyone is probably thinking,
I'm Googling.
I have no idea.
Is Harry Seldon. So, my parents had a very small room in the house. Whoa, have you just read?
Yes, yeah.
So, oh no, I feel slightly hurt that you're laughing about that.
Can I read it out?
Yeah.
Harry Seldon is a fictional character in Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. In his capacity as a mathematics professor at Strealing University on the planet Trantor, Seldon develops psychohistory, an algorithmic science that allows him to predict the future in probabilistic terms. How old were you when you wanted to be this person?
About 11. So so I have been a nerd for a very long time. My folks had this small room in their house where they put all their other books, right? All the ones that weren't out in the bookcase or scattered through the house, etc. And for me, being a lover of books, it was like this little treasure trove, right? So there were boxes and boxes of these books that they couldn't or wouldn't give away or exchange. And during one day of rummaging, I came across this. It was an all-white cover hardback book with the title embossed on the spine, and it was the Foundation trilogy by Isaac Asimov. And I remember reading it and being utterly engrossed. So, as Ross has alluded, it tells the story of this mathematician, Harry Seldon, who developed a new science called psychohistory, and it could be used to predict statistically the future course of very large bodies of humanity, right? Almost like a kind of souped up statistical sociology. And then he used that science to put into motion this series of events that would save humanity from thousands of years of depression and barbarism. And so I wanted to be that guy, right? Not specifically, somewhat shamefacedly, not specifically to help people, but to be able to bring some understanding to the seemingly unknowable, right? Which ultimately drove me to studying maths at university and having this kind of broad interest in science and the underpinnings of science. So yeah, I wanted to be, I wanted to know what it was like to be like that guy.
Okay. And how about you, Ross? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Bilbo Baggins. I wanted to be a writer. I've always wanted to be a writer. When I was like 5 years old or something like that, I sat with this binder and watched The Lion King. And as I was watching it, I would draw the characters, and they would all have little speech bubbles where they would say their name. So, Simba, Pumbaa. I claim I invented Pokemon. But this was my first foray into writing. Everyone looked at it and was like, "Oh, that's amazing! Oh, that's really good. You've written a book. Wow!" And I was like, "Oh, people like this. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life." So that was the trajectory I went on. And then I went to study creative writing at uni. And then in my final year, panicked and switched to journalism because I was like, "No one makes any money out of this." But the journalism took me to GoodPractice, then writing for the toolkit product that Owen mentioned.
Yeah, well, that was going to kind of lead on to my next question, actually, and but you've kind of answered it. How was your journey into kind of GoodPractice? How did that happen? But like I say, you've kind of covered that, which some people think we've planned that, but that was smooth. I like that.
So I could tell you that I applied. I found the job and it didn't sound very interesting online. And then I applied for it and was like, I don't really want this. And then I got an interview and I thought, I really don't want this. Don't want to be doing this management stuff. This doesn't sound very interesting. And then I worked there for 9 months doing maternity cover. And then I was out on the way out the door and Owen said, I know this is not really what you want, but there's an opening on the e-learning team if you want to give it a go for a while. And it is a different career than this journalism thing that you've got like your heart set on. But you might find it quite fun and quite rewarding. And he was spot on. It's an excellent job. I absolutely love it. I've been dragged kicking and screaming into the world of learning design, but it's great. So it's all worked out. Thank you, Owen.
The saviour. That's what we should probably call you now, Owen, the saviour. That would work.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you sold the role a little better at the get-go, then maybe it wouldn't have been so difficult.
Oh,
So
didn't have to. You were desperate for the job.
So here's what we're going to do. I have 6 terms, and Ross, we'll start with you first. I'll give you 3, and I want you to tell me what comes to mind when I say these, and then Owen will go to for the other 3. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. Ross, first one is digital learning.
What were the instructions again?
What comes to mind when I say that?
I thought of Data from Star Trek, to be honest.
Okay, that's fine.
Is it like a word association thing, or you want something deeper?
No, it's not like one of them things where I hold up a painting, some black paint and say, "What do you see?" and someone says, "Dead bodies." It's just whatever comes to mind to you, Ross.
Yeah.
But yeah, MOOCs.
Honestly, I thought waste of time, but I don't think that's fair. We could get into it, but
Okay.
I have reservations.
Okay, and your next one and last one is virtual reality.
I don't know what I'm thinking of. Tron, I guess.
Okay, Tron, cracking film. Over to you, Owen. So the first one is augmented reality.
What?
AR.
Oh, nascent technology.
Okay. Classroom
School.
and L&D.
A profession in which I work.
Okay. Good. I like that. So
Did you want better answers?
no, I think
I'm just giving him quick answers, Ross.
Yeah, I
Didn't think,
know.
yeah, just go with it.
Yeah.
So I guess these podcasts are more about the people behind the learning and what shaped them. And I think one of the things which we see in corporate environments is, when we go for the interview, it's always about, this is something I did and this great idea. And I actually personally feel like what we should be asking at interviews is, actually show me what your failure CV looks like, or your failure resume. Show me where you failed and what you've learned. But maybe the question to you, Owen, first is kind of, what's been your biggest failure, which has ended up being possibly one of your biggest positives in life?
Across my entire life.
Yep.
So my biggest failure would have been not completing my degree at university. So I, because I wanted to be Harry Seldon, studied maths, and I had a choice of 2 universities. One was King's College in London, and I'm from Edinburgh, and I wanted to move out of Edinburgh, and so it was King's College London and Aberdeen University. And for various reasons, I was put off, not by anyone, but by an experience of going and studying down in London. So Aberdeen it was, and off I went. And I needed to pay my own way through university, or I needed to work, basically. And so I was studying at the same time. I was studying pure maths in the first couple of years of science, on a science track, and then I was and I was also working full time in a bar, 39 hours a week. And what I discovered was that whilst the first 2 years were an absolute breeze, when I got into a third year and the courses narrowed down and the maths got suddenly serious, it was a struggle to get through. And basically by the end of third year, I think I might have qualified for an ordinary degree, but I failed a couple of exams. I needed to resit, and I just thought, you know what, I couldn't do this for a fourth year. Just could not manage it at all. And so I just decided, well, I'm going to cut my losses and go off and get a job, and maybe I'll come back to this university stuff. And so it taught me lessons around taking on too much, and it also, to a certain extent, I I think I chose I'm certain I chose the wrong degree. I was more interested, I found out going through that, it was a pure maths course. I was more interested in the applied stuff. I was more interested in the stuff that you could turn into something actionable than some of the slightly more theoretical, navel-gazing aspects of like a pure mathematics course. So I still love mathematics, but it's driven more towards those aspects that I feel I can apply now.
What's the difference between those two things, pure and applied mathematics? What would you apply maths to? I don't know if that's a stupid question. Like outside of like doing an engineering degree, for example, that sounds like...
Well, it's exactly the kind of thing that you would apply maths to.
Right. Right.
Or things like, for example, logistics is another area. Logistics, which sounds incredibly boring, but it's actually got a really interesting strata of mathematics that's sitting in behind it. But with pure maths is more maths for the sake of maths. Applied maths is exactly as you would anticipate. Maths with the intention of using it for some purpose, like engineering. Or there's no science degree that you can do that doesn't have an aspect of applied mathematics to it. It's just how complex the maths is.
Okay. How about you, Ross?
So I was struggling to think of something. I have two, I don't know if I consider them massive failures. Well, one was I killed a guy once when I was writing for Scottish television. I got a press release about the Country Music Hall of Fame, something like that. I was told to, write that up. And that was an environment where you had to write stuff up in half an hour, get it out, and then move on to the next one. I had to write between 8 and 12 articles a day was my job, writing for their website. The press release came through and it's this year we'll be honoring the late A, B, and C. Okay, so you got to rewrite this. And it's okay, so and they'll also be honoring A, B, and C, who all died this year. No, they hadn't all died that year. Only one of them was late. The other two were very, very much on time. And one of them phoned up to tell us this. I don't imagine the readership of this was particularly high, but I must have a Google alert in his name or something like that. Or if you look at what's the coverage of my award going to be, they're claiming I'm dead. So I think from that I learned to fact check, be a little bit more cautious before hitting publish on stuff. And then another one, kind of similar to Owen's actually, was I'm doing a master's in digital education just now. And I'm coming to the end. And in my second year, I did a course on learning analytics. And I'd found the whole program pretty easy until this point. And I was just completely overwhelmed by learning analytics to the point that I broke down in tears in the street to my wife and was like, can't do this anymore. Don't understand a word that it's saying. It's all maths. Gave up on that when I left school. Focused completely on English, and now I've got no idea what anyone's talking about. I feel like I'm just going to fail this course. And so my wife has said to me, well, just focus on that for a bit. Cut out all the other stuff. I was going to fiddle lessons at the same time. She's like, just stop doing that for a while. Reasonably active social life, just cut that. That was all. Extra pressure, just work out what you're doing with this. That was the course that I got the highest mark for in the end, and I'm doing my dissertation on the final assignment on the course was to come up with a proposal for an experiment, and that proposal is now my dissertation. Wow. So similar to Owen, I just learned to sometimes you can just cut stuff from your life when you're getting overwhelmed and focus on certain areas for a period of time.
That sounds more like listen to Amy and let her run your life for you.
Oh yeah, no, she listens back to this. She's not going to be like, I had this lovely story about Amy and then came to the conclusion that thank you, Owen.
What I was thinking in my head then was there's a saying in it behind every good man is a better woman. That's kind of that's what comes to my mind.
Yeah, normally a few.
It's a good show.
Not in the sense of having multiple partners. I've gone into your mother, your grandmother. So cut that.
Oh wow!
That's the kind of stuff that we cut out of the Good Practice podcast. It was Ross talks himself into a hole.
What's we can cut that if we need to. What if you was to summarize each other up? So Ross, this is to you first. If you was to summarise Owen up in 5 words, and let's use 4 because my memory can't hold more than 5, what 4 words would you use?
Intelligent, demanding, fun, and hairy.
Okay.
I thought those were quite good.
Yeah, definitely. Owen, over to you.
So for 4 words to describe Ross, talented, effusive, opinionated, and interrupting.
Oh, I like it. So, I mean, I think, a lot of time I think one of the things which I really notice about your podcast is there's a genuine feeling of you guys get on with each other. It's, you are friends. I that's my personal feeling and what I get from your podcast. But I guess going back to kind of, I guess I want to take this more towards an L&D point of view more than anything. When we look into kind of the corporate environment and we look at the and I use the term corporate L&D, what do you think are the biggest bottlenecks? Because within teams we can we can't necessarily pick our teams as such, but maybe it's not teams, maybe it's not people. What do you think the biggest bottlenecks are in corporate? And we'll use corporate learning just to make it a bit more specific.
Sorry, Ross, you go ahead.
So I think that this might be slightly primed by what you just said about me and Owen, is that we are overly focused on how we present ourselves at work, to the point that we almost like we're in corporate L&D. We have to appear very corporate. We can't speak to each other the same way that we would if we were to meet at a barbecue or in the pub. We're at work, so we have to be serious. And when you're talking about serious things, you cannot let your emotions show, and you cannot have fun at work. Particularly once you start talking, dealing with lawyers, some of whom I've worked with for a long time, and by the end of a project, you do know that they have a dog and they're into skiing, but at first they're reluctant to let you find out what they're actually like as a person. They have to wear the business suit. And the reason I think that this answer was slightly prompted by what you said about me and Owen is that I think that we have developed a relationship doing the podcast that didn't exist beforehand. And I think it's through having the podcast conversations every week that we've got to know each other. I think we've become friends through the podcast. I wouldn't say that we weren't friends beforehand, but didn't really know Owen that well. So that's the answer.
Okay. Owen, anything you want to add on that one?
I just think it's interesting that Ross tackled this question from a completely different perspective from the one that I was thinking about it. So
people don't behave professionally enough at work.
I don't agree with you. Just I thought about it totally different. So I think there's a mixture of things that get in the way of L&D departments getting things done and changing things around. Part of that's what I would describe it as the sort of the legacy of the classroom trainer, right? So if you think about the senior people in organizations, the number of them who have kind of worked their way up the ranks and being a classroom trainer has been a significant part of their identity. I think shaking that off is very difficult for them. And so they're not naturally digital people at all, particularly at the senior levels. I genuinely think that IT infrastructure.
Before you move on, I'm going to interrupt.
Yeah.
Because I think that first point is the same point that I'm making, which is that you have, when the classroom training started in businesses, it was based on the school model, which has a constant power dynamic between the teacher and student. And I think that was brought into classroom training. And then I think that's still the case now. It's about we are the experts and we're going to tell learners what they need to know. Yeah. And off the back of that, they're going to behave more like us. We cannot possibly acknowledge that they have individual traits that they might want to do something differently, or that I could possibly be wrong because I'm a professional and I know what I'm talking about. I can't let that mask slip ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess you're right. But I think my thing is that that's part of their identity.
Yeah,
that's part of and part of they've done a whole bunch of stuff that I think a lot of people now are looking at and saying it's probably not been that effective, and it's really difficult for you to look at something that you've done literally and say actually a significant chunk of what I've done isn't effective, so you hold on to it. I think IT infrastructure is a thing. I think that the sort of aging IT infrastructure stops, and some of the policies they've got in place stop giving people permission to experiment and try out new things with new stuff. And I think there's a lot of blockers in the way that you could work around, but to what extent people are willing to take that risk is, there's a range there, and I think there's an overall lack of willingness to take those risks and do something different because of the risk of failure. I think you have to risk failure if you're going to genuinely do something different.
Yeah.
I think that loops back around to my point again. Actually, you're not allowed to fail at work. That's just another one of the ways you can show that you're vulnerable.
But isn't that interesting? We have the corporate environment who says, we want to do innovation and we want to do this, and I'm going to insert as many buzzwords as possible, innovation and this and that. But then the first thing you do is when you step back outside and maybe you come out of it a bit, you go, actually, you want us to do innovation, but you're not allowing us to fail. That's the only way we can actually go with that. We need to fail 100 times before we get the thing what we're aiming for. And then I think it's interesting that what the business wants versus the business ideas versus the business structure. So, it's like you say there, Owen, kind of the business idea is we want these new ideas and we want to do this and we want to try these new ways of working. But fundamentally, one of the things what's stopping that is maybe your HR team. And these old processes, what are in place to kind of, maybe they was fit for purpose many, many years ago. But I think the HR team, sometimes someone like the HR team, kind of, they move, but sometimes the processes don't move with them.
Well, they're fit for purpose.
I think there is a lot of policy in place that were never fit for purpose, that were retroactively put in place because one thing went wrong once. And so something happens and they go, how do we prevent that from ever happening again? And they put in a policy and it stymies a whole bunch of worthwhile experimentation.
I was going to say the same point, but I was going to pitch it as a positive. I was going to say, something went wrong once, and so they had to put something in place to stop that happening, and that's fine, right? It's successfully doing that, and they have that in IT, and they have that in legal, and they have that in HR, and the facilities team have that, and all these policies are in place to protect the organization from risk, but that does constrain what you can do within it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess this podcast is kind of very disjointed. I want to try and knock you sideways with some questions. So let's try that now. I think this first one's going to you, Ross. If there was a billboard, and this billboard was 1 million people are going to come out of a stadium and they're going to see this billboard, what message would you put on there for 1 million people to see?
It's okay to tell people you've shit yourself.
Okay.
I could explain that.
Go for it.
Because you asked before this podcast if we had any kind of funny stories and how you would introduce it. And I have got a reputation among my pals for having these stories, for having shat myself basically. Big one being, I was in a shopping centre in the middle of Bangkok. My bowels just emptied out. And this links back to the how we portray ourselves at work. We can't tell anyone that we've got this embarrassing story. We have to be professional at all times. No, you don't. You can be honest with people and they'll probably find it quite funny, and you can be sort of self-effacing and stuff, and you can tell people that you shot yourself.
Okay. I like that. Yeah, I remember seeing that. I was thinking, I'm going to bring this up in this podcast. It definitely needs to be brought up.
Don't worry. If you speak to me for long enough, I'll bring it up.
It's beautiful. Same question to you, Owen. What would you put?
Oh, good. I thought I was going to get a different one. What would I put on a billboard? I put something along the lines of, if you've got a simple answer to a difficult question, it's probably more complicated than you think.
Okay. And is there anything you want to elaborate on that, or?
I just, kind of going back to the, strapline of a guy who's in love with good ideas. I think I love finding out about new, interesting ideas that I think have got some legs. And the more the ones that seem to resonate for me the most are ones that expressly accept that what at a superficial level seems relatively simple is probably a lot more complicated. And so, a lot of the ideas that I'm attracted to are the ones that help you fill it out, how to bracket that problem. How do you tease out truth from something that appears complicated, rather than the kind of silver bullets ideas that are like, all your dietary requirements are solved by simply not eating meat or cutting out alcohol from your diet or whatever it might be. I don't like the idea of silver bullets, because more often than not, when you investigate them, they turn out to be utter nonsense.
Okay. So if I was to kind of say to you, and I can do this all questions, but I kind of like not doing that and kind of getting two perspectives on it. It's a good dynamic. But if I was to say to you, Owen, how, if you were to give a child a gift, what gift would you give?
Well, it would depend on the child.
Okay.
I'd find out what they like.
The complete foundation series. But Isaac Asimov.
Do you know what? If they were that way inclined, Ross, that would be a perfect gift. No, I would find out what they were interested in. What do they like? What do they, what do they like to do in their spare time? I don't think there's. I'm more inclined to encourage something that's already there than try and spark something completely new. And if I don't know, then I'll probably buy them something sciencey.
Okay. And Ross, over to you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that was a good answer for Owen. It seems like, I'm more of a mind to curate children's tastes, but that might be because Owen's a little bit older and maybe has more experience buying presents for children.
Okay.
So he's like, what do you like? I think I'm thinking more along the lines of, you should like this.
And if you don't, keep it to yourself.
Exactly, yeah.
So, what about books then? So I guess kind of moving from kind of this child thing to kind of now, I know I'm a keen reader and listen to some of your podcasts. You guys listen to podcasts, and I think you actually did one where you put a question out to Twitter asking about what books do you recommend in L&D. But actually, take that out. I want to know what books you read, and actually, this can be personal or professional. And we'll start with you. We'll start with you, Russ. But what book would you give as a gift to 4 people?
I would give Endurance by Scott Kelly, who is an astronaut. He's one of the twins. Do you remember NASA had 2 twins working for them? So they sent one to space for a year and the other one stayed on the ground because they wanted to see the effect of being in space for a year and have compare the genetics of the pair of them when they got back. But I was thinking about this question in advance because this was one of the ones that you preempted us with. And I thought of a whole range of books by astronauts that I think are good to read. There's a certain way that people who have been in space write, which is really poetic. It's like their eyes have been opened. But then the more I thought about it, the more I thought that actually people who've been in space have gone through a rigorous process to get there in the first place. It's probably a certain kind of person that ends up in either the US or the Russian space program. And first of all, they tend to be very congenial. Very important if you're going to be in space that you get on with whoever you're there with. They're ultra high achieving. incredibly athletic, tend to be incredibly smart. So yeah, I would recommend anything that is written by any astronaut. I think is always it's an exciting sphere to be writing about anyway. And these true stories, these things that have actually happened. It's an exciting place to work. And the kind of person that's drawn to it tends to be an engaging storyteller. So long answer, but for now I'll say Endurance by Scott Kelly is a good place to start.
Okay. I've personally not read that one, so I will definitely add that onto my list. Side note, have you listened recently to the Radio Lab about the fact that they think they can, and it's not really about astronauts as such, but it's about space, and they think now they can predict the 3 hours after the meteor hit what happened. Have you heard that podcast?
Oh, I downloaded it. Did you tweet it?
Yes.
I downloaded that episode. I had given up on Radiolab because I got annoyed by the style of it, but I will listen to that one.
It's a decent one. Yeah, I get that the style's kind of hit and miss.
So, I was in a bookshop and I was like, "What happened after the meteorite hit?"
Exactly.
And it goes on like that.
Owen, over to you. Kind of, what book would you recommend?
I mean, it's similar to my child question, depending on what the person was interested in. But if they were at all interested in science fiction, I read a couple of books recently that I thought were just the most feel good. They were the most feel good science fiction that I read for a while. There's a trend now in science fiction and fantasy to go all sort of grim and dark and write about these gritty characters. But these two are they were great. I mean, they dealt with some difficult issues, but they were also kind of heartwarming at the same time. So the first one was called The Calculating Stars, and the second one was called The Fated Sky. And they are a look at an alternative history of the space race. So the concept is, funnily enough, a meteor hits the eastern United States, obliterates Washington, various other places, and then as part of the recovery, they decide, oh right, we need to start living on Earth is fragile. They put together this international conglomerate, and the aim is to get up to space. And it tells that story, some familiar parts according to how the space race tended to work out. But it's told from the perspective of a female astronaut, and it deals with sexism and racism in the 50s and 60s and beyond.
Oh, nice. That sounds pretty decent book to actually, to be fair. I mean, I guess
Ross, you have gone silent again. I can't hear you. You were.
Oh,
it looks like you were interjecting to say something funny. Oh, dear. Oh, here he is.
Hello.
Wait for it. My mic keeps crashing. I thought that whole thing was a build up to the Foundation series. I thought he's really milking this one, and then he's going to come and bring it in for landing with that Foundation punchline again.
Oh, I didn't tell a joke.
No. Also, it's just so joyous and feel good. So a meteor wipes out Washington.
Yeah, I ended up reading that thinking, God, that was a really enjoyable book to read. It wasn't all totally miserable, which a lot of the science fiction and fantasy is nowadays.
Have you read? Sorry, I'm taking over the hosting. Sorry.
No, go for it.
Children of Time.
I have that. I haven't read it yet.
Spider's book. So it's another. I heartily recommend. It follows. Humans are planted seeds on a foreign planet. They want to quickly evolve other humans, but they accidentally evolve a load of spiders instead. And it follows the stories of humanity fleeing the planet as the spiders evolve. And then eventually those two stories come together with disastrous consequences. But I thought it was really feel good in the end as well. It's quite dark the whole way through, but yeah.
Yep, space genocidal warfare, but with heart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So warming. So, okay, so let's get back into good practice. I want to get into, in fact, let's do this first. So, yeah, well, I think I went with Owen first. So over to you again, Rafa. So, what I want you to do is describe what you do as if you was explaining it to a 5-year-old.
Oh. So I make fun, educational web experiences. You can say that to a 5-year-old. This is why I
lost me already. I mean, you've lost me, let alone a 5-year-old.
I make fun websites to help you learn stuff.
Okay.
But I would say it in that voice.
And Owen, yeah, go for it. 5-year-old.
God, that's an excellent question for a 5-year-old. So I make apps like the one on your iPad, but for people at work, like when your mum and dad go to work.
Okay, I like that. Which moves me on seamlessly to good practice. And so, I kind of know what you guys do, and kind of we spoke at events, and when we spoke in the past. But yeah, maybe for our listeners, explain what it is you actually do, and kind of some of the challenges that you're facing, and some of the solutions and the outcomes what you've had.
What do you think we do?
So I think you do a great podcast. I think my gut feeling, if someone was to say to me, what's the words what jump out, I would have e-learning, I would have toolboxes, and I would have management. They're the kind of key things what jump out to me. That's my understanding. But that's like pressure, gun to head, kind of what's the key things.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Or is that not?
It's pretty fair. I think we have struggled in the past to explain to people what we do, particularly because on the podcast we've been we are conscious it could be perceived as a 30-minute advert that you listen to once a week, and so we've shied away from speaking too much about what we do, unless you go way back to episodes 1 to 20, which I don't think you should. There's a lot of that in there. But we basically create resources to help people do their jobs better, and then we deliver them in the way that is easiest for them to get access. And that might be through our toolkit app, or it might be through e-learning, or we have an LMS as well.
Yeah. And so I would say we've got kind of 3 strands to the business. So there's the toolkit, and for all that sometimes it can get dressed up, it is a website with useful content for people who work in mid to large size organizations, right? That's it. It's articles, top tips, how-to guides, short videos, etc., but all with the purpose of helping you get something done. So there's a content library of about 2,000 things, and it's delivered through a website. And we try and make that website as useful and usable and easy to access as possible. And then we've got a learning management system, the purpose of which is to support formal learning only. So it doesn't try to be anything else other than just an LMS. So if you want something that just tracks compliance, it does that. If you want something that tracks compliance but also supports other formal learning things, that's what it is. But it is very specifically not for doing the same thing that the toolkit. It can't. My view is that you can't have a single interface that does both of those things. I think you're better having single applications that do one or two things really well, rather than something that tries to do everything. So, and that's what the LMS is focused on, is just supporting formal learning stuff. And then on the e-learning side, we've got a suite of really good off-the-shelf e-learning modules. I think a lot of people might disagree with that, but they're really...
Wait, what?
Well, no, I think people hear e-learning and they don't think. I mean, they're more like...
You mean people that haven't seen them?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
But I would, if you were to describe them to someone, and that they're not a series of screens all hooked up together. They're interactive web pages with a purpose. Is probably the best way of describing it. And then we provide a bunch of bespoke custom stuff for people who want, people who need custom content. And sometimes that custom content is best delivered as an interactive web page.
Okay.
So we had Nick Shackleton-Jones on our podcast, which came out today, and he was talking about two kinds of learning experience. One is a resource and one is an experience.
Yep.
And so the toolkit would fall into the resource category. There's a rake of resources that you can use to be better at your job. And then the e-learning, as far as possible, within there are certain constraints when you get into, we have to cover such and such for compliance, is an experience. So an example of what we've done there would be, and I think I'm allowed to speak about it, but I'll check after this. We did a project for Virgin Trains.
Okay.
For all their new starts. A surprising number of whom have never been on a train before. They're very young, typically. There's a lot of sort of 18-year-old school leavers. So one of the things that we created was a 360 train tour. So you put on a headset, they would get posted a headset in advance of starting. They open the video of this tour on their phone, and they can hear two people from Virgin Trains talking about what it's like to work on a train. And as they listen, it moves through the compartment. So you can see the driver's cabin, and then the galley, and then first class and standard class, the driver's office, the train manager's office, all these kind of things. So it was a way of, at scale, giving people the experience of what it's like to be on a train and be in first class before you turn up for your first day of work at Virgin Trains. So that's an example of one of the e-learning projects.
So
it's not the kind of click next
click
stuff
next.
Everyone thinks it's shit.
Yeah, I want to go and kill myself after going on it. So, I mean, for me, I kind of same mindset as Nick, really. Resources, job aids, blah, 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 and actually give them the experience to actually make them care. I think with something like with onboarding, bringing new people in, a lot of the time they already care, they're excited. It's a new job. It makes your job easier if they actually care about what we're doing. But I guess it's interesting that you talk about e-learning. I'm not massively vocal no more about e-learning. I used to be the person who hated it, literally. But when I use that term e-learning, I'm talking predominantly about the click next kind of e-learning, not about the stuff what you guys are talking about. But I guess maybe taking out the example what you've just used now, but what's one of the biggest problems you face with customers, with your clients? Like, maybe it's managing their expectation versus the reality. What you as a company, what's your biggest challenge, especially when it comes to like something like e-learning or digital learning?
So from my perspective, and a lot of this is driven by the experience of the toolkit, for example, which is a kind of much more mature offering. We've found a lot of ways to preempt this, but one of the things that we experienced in the past is that clients would ask for stuff that wasn't actually useful, and in some circumstances actually degraded the experience. And so we're really clear now on what the toolkit is, why it's successful, what things you can change, but specifically, you can change anything, but there's some things that we strongly advise them not to change because we know that it has a negative impact on the user experience. So it is that I think a lot of it's coming from a lot of the suggestions and the requests come from a good place, but it also come from the place of the client's own perspective and experience and their contextual awareness, and not necessarily being able to put themselves into someone else's shoes. So we do all this research and user testing, etc., in order to confound our own preconceptions, or to put our own preconceptions to one side. That's not, it's what we prefer doesn't matter. What matters is what the end users prefer, right? What kind of interactions engage them, what makes things easier to find for them. And what we found is that it's very often quite different from the stuff that we might find easier. And therefore the clients ask for stuff that falls into that similar kind of bucket of actually what's true of our clients isn't necessarily true of most people in their organization.
It's really interesting you mentioned this. So I wrote a whole article on LinkedIn, but I ended up not sending it out. I ended up saying no, this will be suicide, so I didn't bother. But I guess
So instead you're going to share it on a podcast.
yeah. But one of the things was it was talking about employee experience, and he said like, what's some quick things you can do with an employee experience? And I said my gut feeling, it was just a voice note which went to text, but I was like, if you want a good employee experience, the first thing you should do is not let the business shape for that. And I think you see that a lot of the time. You see it in learning. Kind of, we make this giant assumption that we know best. We know how our users are going to engage with X, Y, Z. And fundamentally, we're fixing a problem what actually probably isn't even a problem to the user. We're just making this giant assumption. But it is that kind of human-centered approach, And I think people are starting to use that term now, I think rightly. But it's an interesting one. But kind of, where do you see it going next? Like, when we look at this digital, and I'm not going to use e-learning, but let's call it digital experience. Where do you see that going next, or where do you see it going next for you guys?
I think probably further and further down the experiences route. Because what Owen was talking about with the toolkit development sounds very similar to what happens on a lot of our e-learning projects, where over the course of 3 months, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier on, you work with a lawyer for 3 months on a project. It's a really collaborative approach. So I would bring the learning design side of it, and they would bring their subject matter expertise. So they will be totally involved in every stage of the scope, and then we'll start to build like a wireframe of what we're going to be producing, and they input into that, and they make comments, and then we'll go back and forth, and we meet once a week to talk about it, at least once a week to talk about it. And then we start adding graphics and videos and animations and all this kind of stuff. And by the end, they normally feel ownership for it, but they've created it. And then it goes out to the wider business at that last point. And we go, well, we're just going to get a check from the wider business. And that's when all of these conflicting ideas come in, and every decision gets questioned, and it starts to bulk up a bit with things that degrade the user experience. And I think probably the way that we'll go is even further from content delivery and more down the experience route.
Awesome. It's interesting. I was talking.
Try and remove those opportunities for anyone to add anything in later on, because it's clear that it's not a PDF.
It's a good point you make, though. I think when you work with someone like I was having a chat with Tracy was from Sky, and I was asking about her kind of approach, on the stuff what she's kind of getting on with now. And I think she said we have 3-4 e-learning pieces across the whole of the organisation. That's it, and they are fundamentally for a compliance, a very, very, very strict compliance. I think they use like a really lightweight LMS, and the rest of it is fundamentally experience. It's experience design, and I think experience design is still being defined about what it is and what it isn't. How I define experience design is different to, say, someone like, I don't know, Bob down the street, who I'm assuming is in learning and design. But kind of, I think learning design at the moment is kind of, experience design is kind of still yet to be defined. But it's really interesting to see that I think we're just getting cleverer with our digital kind of approach. We've gone 100% one way and gone, everything needs to be digital and needs to be this e-learning. And I think we've seen the kind of fallout, if you like, of that. And now we're kind of coming back more towards this more experience approach. But have you guys got, one of the things which I've been working on with a client at the moment is voice, and using voice with a client. Is that something you guys have been tampering around with, trial and error, see if it works, if it doesn't?
No, that's not 100% true. Ross, you share?
We haven't. Our technical team did have a hackathon.
Yeah, we did a hackathon with Alexa. That was more just to find out what the what the potential was. It was also an interesting piece of work, and there were other good technical reasons for us to have that as a target. Voice was an aside.
Yeah,
kind of like it wasn't the it wasn't it was an oblique kind of outcome of it. It was some of the other stuff around how we architect certain things that went into that. Voice is kind of like sitting there as I think at some point in the future it will get interesting, but I am genuinely more interested in things that will get significant adoption within an organization. And for me, most normal people aren't yet using their voice assistants, whether it's Alexa, Google Home, etc., to do anything other than play BBC Radio 2, or if they're very sophisticated, switch on the living room lights. Those things seem to be incredibly. It's just really early, right? So you take the total population and you think, how many of them have actually got a voice assistant, right? You reduce that by an enormous amount. How many of them use it for anything other than playing music or the radio? And you reduce that by another amount. And then how many of them are using it successfully and happily to do anything else? I mean, I've recently set up a bunch of lights in my house attached to Alexa. I am pretty technically competent, and it was a total pain in the arse. So I'm interested in that stuff. So I think people's frustration level with what they can actually get done via voice prevents it from being a viable, scalable solution for me.
Yeah, I think it's the same as like Owen was talking about the way people use our product is not the way that we expect them to use it earlier on. So years ago, like 5 years ago, I sat in on some user tests for the Toolkit product, and you give people certain challenges and then you watch how they do it. So one of the challenges was find a resource on time management, and there's a search bar at the top right of the toolkit, and I thought any reasonable person would type time management into that search bar. I watched 3 people in consecutive sessions not do that. They all scrolled down the entire page to look for stuff. And I think after that we changed the color of the text of the search box or made it bigger and all this kind of stuff, and it didn't matter at all. I think the kind of person that uses a search box is like really in the top tier of all web users. 100%, if you're listening to a podcast, you're in the top tier of all web users. Most people do not. And in a large corporate organization, the majority of people are not going to be that sophisticated.
Yeah.
So the idea that they're all going to be using voice just seems far-fetched just now.
It's got what it does have going for it at the moment is it's the novelty factor, but how quickly that wears off, I'd be interested in exploring.
Yeah,
it's also putting accessibility into the world as well. I think that there's good arguments for it for that audience, and so if stuff supports voice commands, then that would be grand. But I mean, I don't use it at all.
But why that as opposed to something like a screen reader, for example, which is more mature, much more sophisticated, is well used, well understood, as opposed to, I mean, Alexa is frankly pretty shonky.
I was thinking specifically about turning on the radio, actually.
Oh right,
yeah.
So,
but yeah, it's a fair point.
I think it is very gimmicky voice.
What are you doing with it, Danny? Sorry,
I'm putting.
And then we rubbished it.
Yeah, no, I'm putting people off it. So, and the reason behind it is because I think fundamentally, you get for every 7-10 commands, it does 8 of them wrong. So. Yeah. So it's like it's pointless. You kind of it becomes this point of frustration rather than this point of fundamentally we want something that's going to make our lives easier, and we want it to get rid of the daft tasks of everyday life, and that's for me is where voice could come into it, but it's so far behind. Like I use, I don't want to say the name because it'll go off in my room, but I use Google that assistant, and that's much better than Alexa, I find. But fundamentally, it is just a case of it's great. It turns my lights on, it turns my heating on, and I know a few hotels have been trialing with it in their rooms. But fundamentally, the first task is tell it I love you, That's usually the first question what you say to an assistant, whether people admit it or not. And then the second one is turn the radio on.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, well, maybe behind closed doors, but like fundamentally, like I was building. I was building. I'm doing a talk in June, and I was building this chatbot to kind of onboard people in beforehand. And I've been watching what people try and say to it to kind of program, and fundamentally the "I love you." I've had to program a response in for that.
Really?
That's just based off my, and it's only a Facebook Messenger. It's nothing. It's very branchy.
A bunch of perverts.
Yeah, but it's odd. It's very, very odd. But I just think
it's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
There's a great book called Everybody Lies. It's about a data scientist who worked at Google, and he talks about kind of what.
Oh yeah.
It's yeah.
Finish the story. It's a good story.
I kind of just look at humans different after listening to that. But
even more horrified than normal.
That's exactly it.
What people Google when they think that it's not getting recorded somewhere.
Yeah, and Owen, if you've got Alexa, have you Alexa play your voice commands back to you? It's freaky. It's just you start wondering. You sit back with yourself and go, why am I asking Alexa this when I know the answer anyway? It's odd.
Yeah.
So I guess I've got a couple of quick fire rounds, and I think we are done, guys.
All right.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do alt questions just so I can get through some of these. So Owen, let's start with you. Social media, net positive or net negative for society?
It's still to be decided.
Okay.
It's been decided. That was the noise of it being decided.
That was perfectly timed.
It's a yes.
Russ, three people who would you recommend to follow on Twitter? 3 people. Go.
Yeah, obviously after you guys, Magic Realism Bot is a top follow. It's not a person, but really good. It'll have stuff like the astronaut went to space and came back a cucumber. You get all these like fun little mini stories. Like,
okay.
So that's really good. I'm going to name another bot. There's what's it called? It's like Census Bot, something like that. It creates stories based on US Census data. And so the stories will be along the lines of, I'm a veteran, I've been married 3 times, I'm currently single. And I love like the snapshot into people's lives when you like strip out the way that they might describe it. It's really quite bleak. It's like Charles Bukowski or something, the way that these things are read. And then I feel I should name a human. And so I'm going to go for... Who do I really like on Twitter? Suk Pabial. Is, as well as being a kind and generous man, also tweets all sorts of really fascinating stuff that he finds all the time.
Yes, he's a beautiful human being.
So I think of the top 3 people in the world. 2 of them are robots, and amazing. The other one is Suk.
Owen, bit of a deep one here. In fact, no, I'm going to ask this question, and I want to ask this deep one too, actually. But this is another light, easy one. What's your take on the social media presence of people within L&D?
What's my take on it? I think it's a I genuinely think it's a friendly, open space, perhaps too dominated by too few voices.
Okay. So, we're back over to you.
Yeah, I was just looking up the name of the Census Americans, I think, is the bot that I was talking about.
Okay.
Completely distracted by that.
So this question is going to be a deep one, and it's for both of you. Okay, so the question to you is, do you even like yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in the main.
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't that deep. I find myself tremendously good company.
This was in it. I'm not gonna
I'm
lie.
always available.
This has been the shortest answer to that question. So kudos to you two.
Right.
Or maybe we're just not particularly deep individuals, incredibly superficial. I think life is just too difficult if you don't like yourself that much.
Okay, I like that. And the last
Well,
deep
maybe
one.
I can go deep as well. So
Go for it.
I'm a practicing Christian. I became a Christian 4 years ago, I think. And so I spend every Sunday in church hearing about how terrible I am. And one of the upsides of this is that you are, I think, kinder to yourself. You cut yourself some slack when you accept your inner evilness.
Okay.
Except you're evil and you're definitely
I can go deep.
hell.
That's pretty deep. It's pretty deep. Okay, so let's do it. So right at the beginning of the session, I asked you guys kind of, when you was younger, what is it you wanted to be? And as you know, when we're constantly developing and constantly growing, and we actually never really truly grow old to a point where we stop that. So if I was to ask you the question now, guys, what is it you want to be when you grow older? What would you say now?
A writer. Same answer before. I haven't written that novel yet, so still a writer.
Owen?
Oh, I've stopped thinking about that. I genuinely don't plan that far in advance, like more than sort of 2 or 3 years, because it's ultimately I found it to be pointless. So I just kind of, the only real aspiration is
up on your psychohistory dream.
Oh yeah, that is definitely not happening. I am neither smart enough nor qualified enough to. I don't have enough time, let alone be smart enough for it. So, I just it's more interesting. It's more important to me that I'm doing something that genuinely interests me, and that I don't dread coming into work to do every day than have any grand plan.
Okay, nice. Well, right at the beginning of the session, I asked you to pick 6 numbers, and you had 3 each. So the idea is these numbers kind of tally up to a random list of things I have on my iPad here. And usually it's always if you're on your own on this desert island, but as there's 2 of you, so let's just assume it's just you 2. So there's you 2 on a desert island. and
you were talking about hell.
Yeah.
And the list of items you have, and it's up to you to be as creative as you want with these items. So we had number 21, which was a tire swing. Number 73, which was a canvas. We had number 36, which was a face wash. And then we had number 1, which was a condom. Number 61, which was a clay pot. And then you had number 83, which was a let me have a look, a lace.
Did you write this list?
Yeah, yeah.
Why is number 1 a condom?
I don't know.
You're there by yourself, you monster.
I was thinking about capturing water. It says more about you, that one. So what? I mean, it's up to you. You can work as a dream team, but what do you do with them 6 items?
Tire swing, a canvas, face wash, condom, clay pot, and a lace.
Yes.
So is the tire swing a tire and some rope?
You know what? Because it's you guys, let's go with it. Yeah.
And there's nothing else on the island in terms of provisions other than us.
Just you 2. That's
right.
it.
So food, water, and shelter are the primary things that you're looking to achieve, isn't it?
No, not at all what I had in mind.
Oh, what did you have in mind? What were you wanting to do with that condom?
So I was going to use the canvas as a sail, attach it upright to the tire using the rope, put water in my condom, fill my clay pot with food, use the lace as a fishing line, and then escape. So to be on a desert island with you, I would rather try this harebrained escape plan as you're desperately slashing at my sail in an attempt to build a shelter.
Oh.
Okay, we're going to spend our lives together, Ross. I'm like, I'm off.
I'm out of here.
Oh, do you know what? I mean, I would happily give you all 6 of those things. I'd probably increase my chance of survival if you just went off into the sunset.
As my body would wash up on the shore, you could eat it then.
Yeah. Wow, I mean,
really work without the canvas. I might fight you over the canvas, or at least come up with a proposition for maybe we can work together on a replacement sale. But I'm keeping the canvas.
Yes,
beautiful.
I see 2 factions emerging very quickly. We'll have our own fiefdoms on either side of the island, fighting over this damned canvas.
So
we'll meet at the condom.
So guys, where can people find out a little bit more about what GoodPractice is up to, and kind of where can we find you guys? Owen.
I was waiting for Ross to do his well-oiled where you can find it. So you can find out more about GoodPractice on goodpractice.com, or you can to find out more. But best place to find out more about me is just to follow me on Twitter, where I am semi-active.
Okay.
Twitter for me as well. So at Ross Garner GP and at Owen Ferguson for Owen.
Yes.
Awesome, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danny. I appreciate it.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.